Good afternoon, colleagues and invited guests at the University of Tasmania and in Southeast Asia. It's my true honor to welcome all of you to the 2023 webinar series of the Australia-ASEAN Academic Forum as the co-founder and convener. Thank you so much for your time today. And please allow me to briefly introduce our invited guests and speakers for the session. Professor Nicholas Parallels, Australia-ASEAN Council Board member, Head of School of Social Sciences, the University of Tasmania. Professor Mick Purcell, Deputy Vice Chancellor, the University of Tasmania. Professor Victoria Carrington, co-founder of the Forum, Head of School of Education, the University of Tasmania. Associate Professor Greg Oates, Associate Head of Learning and Teaching, School of Education, the University of Tasmania. Professor Monica Kuskali, co-founder of the Forum, Director of Research of Life Research Center for Disability and Wellbeing, the University of Tasmania. Dr. Bill Baker, co-organizer and chair of this webinar series from the University of Tasmania. Associate Professor Masita Binti Saru, Brunei partner, co-organizer and chair of this webinar series from the University of Brunei Darussalam. Associate Professor Chow Manhood, Malaysia partner, co-organizers and chairs of this webinar series from University Malaya. And two presenters today, Dr. Michelle Dwyer from the University of Tasmania and Dr. Meridian Alam, University of Brunei Darussalam. So now I would like to invite Associate Professor Greg Oates to do the acknowledgement of the country before we invite Professor Mick Purcell to deliver his welcome speech on behalf of the University of Tasmania. Thank you very much, Associate Professor Greg Oates.
Thank you, Vin, and kia ora tēnā koutou and ya pulingana colleagues. So it's actually my great pleasure to welcome you all here, and with the acknowledgement of country, which I'm sure most of you who've been attended these forums before are familiar with. Certainly all our Australian colleagues will be, but those of you from other countries, which I know there's several here, are probably familiar with it as well. So, and from my own country of New Zealand, we always acknowledge our Māori Indigenous people with a mihi, which is the kia ora tēnā koutou, which I began with. The ya pulingana is the welcome from our Indigenous people of Tasmania, for Lituita, Tasmania, the Palawa people. So it's a privilege to welcome you all here. And I know you're all standing on your own lands and you all have a deep sense of connection to the lands which you are sitting on, and be proud, no doubt, of the peoples and the Indigenous peoples which you work with. And Indigenous peoples all over the world have similar issues of colonisation, of dispossession, of the challenges in our modern society. So I just want to say that we're today meeting on Lituita, Tasmania, Aboriginal land, sea and waterways, and I want to acknowledge with deep respect the traditional owners of this land, the Palawa people. And for those of us here in Launceston, we are sitting on the banks of the beautiful Kanamaluka River. In European terms, it's known as the Tamar, but I think the Kanamaluka has a lot more beautiful ring to it. That's what I always know it by. So we're very proud to live on these lands and to acknowledge the way in which the Indigenous peoples have looked after these lands for centuries, and the dispossession and the injustices which they've suffered. But one of the things that I would also like to say here is, in talking with this group here, is the power of education to make a difference for Indigenous peoples and our youth and our up-and-coming society in the future. And I think that's one of the things that we want to think about when we're doing an acknowledgement of country, is the power of education to make a difference. So welcome everybody. I know that we're going to have some exciting conversations over the rest of this week. I will be joining you where and when I can. I've got some earmarked that I know I've got some time to come to, but I will come whenever I can. So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you all and see some familiar faces from last year as well. So tēnā koutou katoa. And it's now my great pleasure to move the baton on to my colleague, Mitch Purcell. So Mitch, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ya pulingana. Hello and welcome everyone, colleagues, distinguished guests. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to this forum, a platform that's dedicated to fostering collaboration and sharing best practice in online education. So over the coming days, we'll delve into a range of topics on online education focused on such key areas as retention and success, vocational education, digital competencies for teachers, student reactions to social media to online learning, a range of topics. And this diversity kind of reflects our commitment to addressing the challenges and opportunities that arise within the realm of virtual education. I'm delighted to note that the forum has grown significantly since its inception. Continue to engage in scholarship of learning and teaching in the online space within higher education generally and across the University of Tasmania and Southeast Asia. I think this really exemplifies our shared dedication, commitment to educational attainment, to teaching quality, and ultimately to student success. This year's event promises to consolidate the relationships that were cultivated over the last few years, forging stronger alliances in the pursuit of academic excellence. Brings together speakers from the University of Tasmania and across our international partners. And we've created an enriching environment for cross-cultural exchange and actual real collaboration. The diversity of perspectives and expertise promises to be a real catalyst, I think, for innovation in the online space, enabling us to address both unique challenges as well as the opportunities that our students and our institutions face. For me, at the heart of any discussion of education, whether that's online or on campus, are really three interconnected pillars. And I've already mentioned these: their educational attainment, their teaching quality, and ultimately student success. It's these pillars that I believe that form a robust and inclusive educational ecosystem. As educators, it's our collective responsibility to empower our students with the necessary knowledge, the necessary skills, the competencies and commitments to thrive in an increasingly complicated and increasingly digital world. And it's through our efforts that we can transcend geographical boundaries, reach an increasingly diverse set of learners, and equip them for both lifelong learning as well as career success and professional success. So as we explore these various facets of online education, let's not lose sight of the human connection. We're here talking about online education, and certainly technology is a powerful tool, but really it's our commitments to foster meaningful connections, to create engaging experiences between students and educators that provides more holistic support that really truly impacts students' outcomes and success. It's our collective goals that develop an educational environment that nurtures both intellectual growth and personal development and instills in our students a sense of purpose, resilience, and adaptability. I encourage you throughout the coming days to actively participate, to share your experiences, and to engage in robust conversation throughout the forum. Let's use this opportunity to learn from each other, to exchange ideas, to identify innovative strategies that will help shape the future of online education. Finally, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to all the organising committee, to the speakers, and all the participants for your valuable contribution that will make this a really successful forum. Together, I think we can create a lasting impact on the lives of our students, advancing frontiers of education, and strengthening the ties between our nations. Thank you, and I wish you all a fruitful and inspiring collaboration.
Thank you very much, Professor Mick Purcell, for your very inspiring speech to open the event. And now I would like to invite Professor Nicholas Farrelly to deliver your speech.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much again, Vin, for the warm welcome. So I'm here in two capacities. I'm Professor and Head of Social Sciences at the University of Tasmania, but I also have the great privilege of serving on the board of the Australia-ASEAN Council. And so I'll say a bit about how these two sets of interests come together and what that means in the context of this remarkable series that has been curated again in 2023. I'm first of all just really grateful to everybody who has made this conversation possible. There's an enormous amount of work that goes into curating such an amazing program, and it's a credit to everyone that we're able to join together around Australia and all across Southeast Asia. I think as we all appreciate, the COVID-19 pandemic delivered what was for all of us an unprecedented shock, and one which had a great many impacts on education and research. Of course, the closure of international and domestic borders, restrictions on movement, but at the same time, this incredible blossoming of the technologies of online interaction, providing all of us with a chance to connect across borders during those difficult years. And the fact that we're now utilising this webinar series to maintain those connections is, I think, one of the excellent outcomes of what we all appreciate was such a traumatic and distressing time all across the world. The fact that we are in this context getting together such a talented group of Australian and Southeast Asian researchers and teachers is, as I said, just a wonderful endorsement of the creative spirit and the use of technology, which we are now benefiting from. The Australia-ASEAN Council, back in the first series for this webinar, was actively supporting the program. And so Vin has invited me today just to offer a few words of context on the work of our Australia-ASEAN Council, what it seeks to achieve, and how we try to ensure that there are even better connections between key Australian and Southeast Asian partners. The Council, the Australia-ASEAN Council, was established back in 2015, and its primary duty is to strengthen cultural understanding, cooperation and connections between the people of Southeast Asia and the people of Australia. I've served on the board since 2020 and do so alongside a number of senior figures from the business and civil society sectors. We have a grants program and support a number of flagship initiatives, all of which are focused on sustaining innovative partnerships between Australia and ASEAN. And the fact that those connections were maintained during the pandemic is only possible because of exactly the kind of creative effort that we see here today. More broadly, and I hope this is useful both for those of you around Australia joining this afternoon and for our friends across Southeast Asia, this all happens in the context of what is a growing and ever-strengthening relationship between Australia and the countries of Southeast Asia. The kinds of activities that we're involved in today go a great distance towards maintaining long-term connections and indeed supporting a shared commitment to innovation. I think for Australia right now, with the shape of the world, relationships, strong, open, meaningful relationships with our Southeast Asian neighbours are more important than ever. And I think it's fair to say that we all have a shared stake in the success of the Southeast Asian region and also in the success of its young people, exactly the kind of people who are benefiting from all of the wonderful education innovation that we will hear about during this series. It is also, I think, worth briefly mentioning that Australia's connections with Southeast Asia go back many decades. In fact, last year, Australia celebrated 70 years of diplomatic relations with Thailand. This year, it's 68 years of diplomatic relations with Malaysia. Vietnam, just to pick another example, Vin, 2023 marks 50 years of Australia's formal diplomatic relations with Vietnam. And perhaps for those of us involved in work at the ASEAN-Australia interface, it's really worth highlighting that next year, 2024, will be the 50th anniversary of ASEAN-Australia relations. So there's been a great deal of effort to sustain these links now over many decades. The conversation that we're involved in here today is part of this long and continuous history of interaction, sharing, learning, debating, discussing, making things happen. And so with that history in mind, and with what we all hope is going to be a really promising future, I again commend the organising team for pulling together this wonderful Australia-ASEAN conversation. I'm certainly looking forward to all of your contributions. I want to say well done to the University of Tasmania team for your ongoing leadership of this initiative, and thanks very much to everybody from across ASEAN who's joined us for the discussion today. So on that very positive note, Vin, back to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Nicholas Farrelly, for your very informative speech. And that provides us with lots of information about Australia and ASEAN Council, the history and mission and relationship with Southeast Asia for many decades. So thank you very much. Now, we are honored to welcome Head of School of Education, Professor Victoria Carrington, to make a comment in the chat box. And if possible, I would like to invite you to speak a few words to our invited guests and colleagues across UTAS and Southeast Asia today. Thank you.
Thank you, Vin. It is so lovely to see so many familiar faces in the chat room. And also, I mean, it was great. We built such an interesting, large discussion and conversation in the last series of talks. There were some wonderful moments of, oh, I'm doing this, you're doing that. Some brilliant relationships were built that I see continue, but it's also wonderful to see new people here today. It just shows how vibrant this region of the world is, the great work that's going on, and the commitment that we have together and individually to make sure that the education in the region that we live in is as strong as it can be. It meets the needs of the people in the region and is doing something really new and interesting, really powerful. As I said in the chat, we are really interested in making sure that the work we do out of this university makes positive social and educational change. And I think that this network of scholars that reaches out across Australia and into Southeast Asia and into a whole range of countries is a really strong example of how impact happens. We build networks, we share understanding, we do things together, and we make changes that impact positively. So I thank you for being involved with this. I thank Mitch, I thank Nicholas, and I thank Greg, but most of all, I thank you, and I thank Vin. Vin is the driver of this network. She puts in an incredible amount of time and energy and care to nurture this grouping and to make it possible for us to meet. So thank you, Vin. Thank you to the other co-chairs and everyone who's going to contribute to this today. This is really important, and I look forward to the conversations. Back to you, Vin.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Victoria Carrington, for your encouragement as always. And that's mean a lot to me and provide me even more motivation to do things. And I'm really grateful to the support from all of you leaders and colleagues at UTAS and across Southeast Asia. I couldn't have done this without you all. So my sincere gratitude to all of you. So now I would like to invite our valued partner from Brunei and Malaysia to deliver the speech. First of all, I would like to invite Associate Professor Joe Manhood.
Hi, thanks. Welcome everyone to this Australia-ASEAN Academics Forum again. So first of all, yeah, I'll keep it very short. My huge thanks to Vin and the Tasmanian team, for getting all of us here together, and that's how we know each other more, and then we forge these very meaningful connections. And I hope that for the next 2 weeks, this week and next week, we'll be all having a really good, productive webinar. That's from me. Thanks, Prof. Masita. Over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Manu. I would like to invite Associate Professor Masita Binti Cheryl to deliver your speech.
Thank you very much. Well, I prepared this, hopefully a short speech, hopefully. Assalamualaikum to the Muslims here, and hello everyone. First and foremost, yes, I would also like to thank you to Dr. Vin for all her hard work and dedication in mainly organizing this event. And I also echo Dr. Vinto's and others' remarks in being delighted to welcome all of you back to the Australian-ASEAN Academics Forum, June 2023 new webinar series. So allow me to share about the situation in the context of my country. Brunei Darussalam has the smallest population among the ASEAN countries with less than 500,000 people. So as was reported to the World Health Organization from 3rd January 2020 to 7th June 2023, we had 307,686 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 161 deaths in Brunei. And Brunei was hit by 3 COVID-19 waves. The first wave occurred between March and May 2020, following 457 days, more than a year, without local transmission. The second wave of COVID-19 hit Brunei from end of August 2021 to December 2021. And the third wave commenced in January 2022. Well, with Brunei being a country with a small population, the adoption of the whole of nation approach and the whole of government approach have proven to be effective in managing the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. And this involves the engagement of all ministers and ministries, including all educational institutions, the private sectors and residents in the country. So everyone's journey may or may not be the same during COVID-19 pandemic, and working from home, sometimes we tend not to realize that we are working more than the allocated standard work hours and work days. And the terms work-life balance and well-being have become the trending terms. From my observation, what was interesting to see was the amount of COVID-19 related researches from Brunei that had been published thus far, from disciplines such as health sciences, education, business-related, technology-related, tourism, and others. So I very much look forward to see more new research opportunities leading the way in this post-pandemic era. Thank you, and wishing this event will go smoothly. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Professor Mazita Saru. And now we are very excited to welcome 2 first presenters today. And now I would like to invite Dr. Bill Baker to chair the session for Dr. Michelle Dwyer.
Thanks very much, Vin, and thank you so much to everyone who's spoken already today. And on behalf of the organising committee, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our very first speaker today for the seminars this year. And of course, that is Mitchell Dwyer. He's going to be speaking about healthcare redesign, a novel method for engaging healthcare workers in quality improvement. Just a little bit about Mitchell. Mitchell joined the University of Tasmania in 2014 to work as a research assistant with Health Services Innovation Tasmania. He then commenced his PhD in the School of Nursing, which looked at urban-rural difference in acute stroke patients' access to care and outcomes. Following the completion of the PhD, Mitchell joined the Tasmanian School of Medicine as an adjunct researcher before starting his current role in early 2021. So a very warm welcome to Mitchell. Mitchell has prepared a presentation which my dear colleague Vin is going to run for us. I will manage the chat space, and we'll start just by listening to Mitchell's presentation, and then we'll engage in some collegial discussion. Thanks so much, Vin.
Thank you, Bill.
Good afternoon all. My name is Dr. Mitch Dwyer, and I'm from the Tasmanian School.
Can everybody hear the sound well? Okay, thank you.
Medicine with you. Good afternoon all. My name is Dr. Mitch Dwyer, and I'm from the Tasmanian School of Medicine with UTAS. This afternoon I'll be talking about our healthcare redesign MOOC. So to give you some background information, healthcare workers all around the world are under increasing pressure to make a more efficient use of the resources they have. They're also under pressure to improve patient and organisational outcomes. A couple of the more prevalent issues encountered by clinicians when doing so are known as waste and unwarranted variation. So waste is basically anything that doesn't add value to a patient's journey as they go through the hospital system. So this might be something like ordering unnecessary tests, or when the hospital stockpile supplies that they don't really have any need for. Unwarranted variation basically refers to situations where there is inconsistency in the care provided to patients, which can't be explained by any other factors. So an example would be if a patient presented to hospital A and they got the gold standard treatment they deserved, and then the same patient, if they were to go to hospital B and they only got, say, half of what they needed, that would be an example of that unwarranted variation, as we call it. But thankfully, we know that a method known as healthcare redesign is a proven means of addressing both waste and unwarranted variation. The trouble is that healthcare redesign to date has mainly been taught to nurses and other healthcare workers via courses, which tend to be costly and time consuming. And in the past, it's also been difficult for those clinicians to gain the support of their organisation, be it in the form of time to complete the courses or financial support from their employers. And that being said, there are signs that the situation is changing and that organisations are beginning to prioritise their staff learning these sorts of things. So we really sought to capitalise on that gap. So when looking around for a way of addressing this gap, we came across massive open online courses, or MOOCs as they're called, and these offer free, time-unlimited access to virtual learning environments. And we figured that that might be a useful solution for addressing this gap. And it's also a useful way of nurses being able to, and other healthcare workers, being able to undertake continuing professional development, as we call it in Australia, which is mandatory training that people must complete each year. Now, across the world, there are currently in excess of 19,000 MOOCs offered by over 900 universities, and they reach in excess of 220 million people. So the reach is quite large. A couple of the downsides are not sure what's happened there. It's is it on mute by any chance?
Ben, can you just check that? It seems we've lost the audio there. Are you there, Ben? That's very odd. Perhaps a way forward, Vin, would be for me to try and share my screen and run it through my PC. Would that be a solution?
I wonder if we could skip forward a little bit to see if it was just one or two slides affected.
It could have been, yeah, indeed. Are you there, Vin? Okay, I might just run it from my PC and see if that solves the problem for us. Just one moment.
We could try that. Yep.
Just one moment. Sorry about this, everyone. It's always guaranteed to be something, isn't there? Okay, one moment, please. No, I don't think I can share my screen whilst Vin is sharing. Okay.
Good afternoon all. My name is Dr. Mitch Dwyer and I'm
Can everyone hear that?
from the Tasmanian School of Medicine. We can. Yep.
Okay, let me just.
Sorry, Bill, I already played the video from the beginning.
Yeah, I'm just going to pump it forward a bit and see if we can hear.
Now, across the world, there are currently in excess of 19,000 MOOCs offered by over 900 universities, and they reach in excess of 220 million people. So the reach is quite large. A couple of the downsides associated with MOOCs, however, are that they've been historically known to have low completion rates, somewhere in the order of 5 to 10%. And there's also a need for digital literacy to some extent, and the fact that they often use somewhat outdated didactic teaching styles. Just some of the limitations that have been levelled against MOOCs over the years. So with the above in mind, we developed our own healthcare redesign MOOC, as it's known. We also had support from our local Tasmanian Health Service for such a course. So they said it'd be great if we could have such a course to give to our employees as a way of getting them involved in redesign without the commitment of an actual university award course. And we developed the healthcare redesign MOOC also with a view to having clinicians get involved in redesign in their workplace. So taking what they've learned and applying it to their daily work environments. That's the end goal. So the MOOC was constructed as a free, time and limited online course consisting of 6 modules. And at the end of completing those 6 modules, participants in the MOOC have the option to purchase a certificate, which they can then present to their employer as evidence of their continuing professional development. So just a few notes about the development of the MOOC itself. We basically took the content from an existing course that we had, known as the Graduate Certificate in Healthcare Redesign, and we condensed it into these 6 modules. And the format of those modules was comprised of some didactic text, some videos, and case studies. We also provided links to relevant articles, which would help to aid learning. We then took this content and we transposed it to an existing learning management system known as the Wicking Learning Management System, which had been used for several other MOOCs in the past, which are offered by UTAS still. Each of these weekly modules had a quiz at the end of it and targeting that module's content, and participants need a score of at least 70% on those quizzes to progress to the next module. Once the content was developed and it was all onto the learning management system, we then went through a peer review process where we sent a pilot copy of the MOOC around to some internal subject matter experts and some external experts as well to get their feedback, which we then incorporated into the final version of the MOOC. We then tried our best to promote the MOOC via using a flyer. I've just got a photo of it here, which we distributed to several of our partner organisations around the country, and distributed internally with the university as well. We were finally able to launch the MOOC in September of 2021. And once it was up and running, we also created share buttons, which allowed people completing the MOOC to share news that they were undertaking the MOOC to social media, namely LinkedIn and Facebook. We then sought to evaluate the MOOC to see how it was going, to see how it was received. So we collected demographic data from all the participants who enrolled in the MOOC. We also had the participants complete an experience survey once they had finished the MOOC. So as of June 2023, we've had in excess of 2,700 enrolments, of which 700 or more people have completed, so about a 26% completion rate, which is really good. Of those participants, around 82% of them are female and 91% of them are from Australia. We had a look at the demographics of people who completed the MOOC versus those who had not, and there were no patterns emerging there. Just some more of the results from our evaluation. We found that the number of quiz attempts decreased with each successive module. So it basically means that people were becoming less and less engaged as they progressed through the MOOC. We also found that in excess of 50% of participants didn't attempt the first quiz. So there were a lot of people who were signing up for the MOOC, perhaps browsing the first module and then not progressing to the first quiz. Interestingly, we also found that several quizzes were reattempted by those who had no need to do so. So people who had finished that particular module were going back in and trying to do the quiz again, presumably to check their knowledge. In terms of the findings from our participant experience survey, the quantitative findings showed that 81% of participants either agreed or strongly agreed that they were satisfied with the course and would recommend it to others. In excess of 80% also reported an improved understanding of redesign methodology and plan to apply this knowledge in their workplace. 62% of participants, or of respondents rather, would like to undertake further online university study. In terms of the qualitative data we were able to glean from the participant experience survey, I've just got a few quotes here, which were perhaps some of the more telling quotes we received. First one here: it was a very informative MOOC, however, it is not as engaging with the audience. Including for user input activities, in my opinion, would make it better. We had another respondent say, I found the balance of written and video presentation of information very user-friendly. I appreciated the flexibility and how I timed the completion of the course. And another one here: would be nice to have more situations as an example, at least two or three different settings. So obviously that's just a small snapshot of the data we received as a whole, but some of the conclusions we're able to form from that data were that the MOOC was generally well received by the participants. We had a very impressive completion rate of 26%, as mentioned, as compared to other MOOCs, which have been reported to be around 5 to 10% completion. We think that engaging with participants while they complete the MOOC could improve completion rates. And there was some feedback that the content of the MOOC was too focused on acute care settings, so within hospitals providing urgent care, as opposed to something like in the community providing GP care. So that's something we can look at improving as well. A couple of limitations of our survey data were that it was only completed by those who actually finished the course. So there's a chance that there were some participants who got halfway through the course and didn't like it for whatever reason and left, and we don't have the ability to know what could have been improved about the course from those particular participants. There's also a question around the generalisability of the findings, given that such a high proportion of the respondents were identified as female and from Australia. So I'd just like to say a brief thank you to my co-authors of the study, Sarah Pryor, Peter Van Dam, Laurie O'Brien and Phoebe Griffin, and also like to acknowledge the efforts of Susie Waddingham, Josh Eastgate and Chris Parker. I've got a link there below to the MOOC itself if you'd like to check that out. And on the right-hand side, I've got the full citation of our evaluation paper if you'd like to read that as well. Thank you for the time.
Over to you, Bill. You are on mute. Okay.
Oh dear, don't you love YouTube? Mitchell, thank you for an amazing presentation to kick us off. I'm sorry about that little glitch in the midway there, but we recovered it and we were able to hear the whole thing. What an absolutely fascinating topic, and thank you so much for the care and attention of your presentation. I will open it up to questions now. I just have a question maybe to get the party started. Understanding the great reach that you can get from a MOOC, what was the commitment to actually set it up? I know you said you had the content pretty much where you wanted it, but it was a matter of structuring the pedagogy and structuring the presentation. What sort of time commitment was that for you and the team to do?
Yeah, I suppose we're very lucky in the sense that a lot of the text and images that we would later go into the MOOC were already in the award course. So there was a lot of the legwork taken out of that. So I would say if you had to do it from scratch, it would probably be maybe a month or something like that. The guys at Wicking were great. They're used to doing these sorts of things with their own in-house MOOCs. So the support we got from them was amazing. And yeah, I think it was wasn't too bad really in terms of the commitment.
And was it, because I've not done a MOOC or run a MOOC before, was there much involved once the MOOC was open to people? What sort of time commitment was that on behalf of the team? Yeah,
once it's up and running, the maintenance is fairly low. We have one admin staff member who looks after the certificates that the participants buy. So she'll keep an eye on them, and she'll post out any hard copy certificates that we need. And in terms of the workload from myself, it's really just every now and then I'll get in there and make sure that the links are all live and up to date still. In time, we'll go through and make a pass and make any updates to the content that's needed. But for the most part, the maintenance is minimal.
Thanks, Mitchell. I'm going to open up to the floor now to hear any other questions for Mitchell about his presentation. Thanks, everybody.
First of all, I want to send my apologies, everyone. I didn't realize that I was on mute when I played the video. It's amazing how we still learn to use this button for many years now. So thank you for helping me with that. I didn't realize why. Okay, what happened? So thank you. And sorry for that. Okay. Yeah, it's a very impressive presentation. Thanks a lot, Michelle, for your well organization. He wanted to re-record in advance to ensure that everything will go smoothly on the day. So a comment from Moon, perhaps Bill, you will invite Moon to provide her comment instead.
Yeah, there any questions from the floor, perhaps?
Any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bench.
Nice.
I would like to know these courses. We want to join for our civil disobedience movement students of Myanmar. How do we join these courses?
Sure. So I think the first thing you need to do, regardless of where it ends up, would be to gather your content together. So you would need to have a rough idea of how long you want the MOOC to run for, how much depth you want it to go into. And then it would be a matter of looking around to see what options are available in terms of learning management systems. So whether your own organisation has a system that they use for similar things, or whether there's an organisation you can partner up with that can offer you a similar platform. And then it would be a matter of just basically taking the content that you've built and putting it onto that platform with the help of their staff.
Thanks, Mon. Are there any other questions for Mitchell? I couldn't see any in the chat session there.
My colleague Phoebe's just posted a URL to the MOOC itself.
Yes, that's in the chat now if people would like to go and have a look at that. Well, I'd just like to extend my gratitude, Mitchell. That was such a wonderful presentation, and to your whole team, what a great piece of work you've been engaged in there. And thank you for taking the trouble to prepare and to be with us today. Thanks, Mitchell.
No problem. Thanks, Bill. Thanks all.
I'll hand back to you, Vin.
Thank you very much, Bill, for sharing, and thank you very much, Michelle, again for your presentation and your many thanks to your co-author as well. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce our next presenter today, Dr. Meridian Alam from the University Brunei Darussalam. Dr. Alam is Assistant Professor of Sociology in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences. He was formerly involved in Australian Research Council discovery projects titled Fostering Pro-Environmental Consciousness and Practice, Environmentalism, Environmentality, and Environmental Education in Indonesia from 2004 to 2019. He also New South Wales mental health first aider and was appointed as a level 4B language examiner for Australian High Commission. His key interest in the area of international comparative education specifically situates in the current trend of global environmental education that has become a space for contemporary youth cultures and cultural capital modalities. His PhD dissertation was entitled When Environment is Ours, Youth Environmentalism receives Research Higher Degree Award distinction from the University of Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia. He also obtained Master of Philosophy in Culture, Environment, and Sustainability from the University of Oslo, Norway, and took up research fellowship at the Nordic Institute for Asian Studies at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark to undertake research in comparative biogas development in Nepal, China, India, and Pakistan during his study from 2010 to 2012. He also holds Bachelor of Social Sciences in Sociology and Master of Arts in Development Sociology, and which was earned at the Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. Welcome, Dr. Meridian Alam.
Hello, thank you so much, Vin, for the short introductions about my profile. So prior to continuing my presentation, I would like to check. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Yes? All right. All right. Can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Can you see my face?
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. I'm now alive. I'm now joining a research group called the International Comparative Education Research Group at the Sultan Hassan Al Bolkiah Institute of Education. It is also the institution where the Associate Professor Masita Shahril teach and undertake her research in education. So my presentation is all about how I create innovative teaching and learning for my geography environmental studies module, GED, during the pandemic. Because during the pandemic, we have experienced so much hurdles, so much struggles, and even the internet connections across the world are experiencing intermittent glitches, right? So my geography module before the pandemic hits the Brunei Darussalam involves fieldwork, and the student must go to the biodiversity garden in our university to take some samples, and they can play with some of plants and even the local, the indigenous animals. But those kind of direct interactions during the pandemic was lost. And then the student must stay at home and they must join the lecture, but in the same time, they should be able to have a good grasp of biodiversity knowledge at home. So here, my duty as a researcher, as a lecturer, as a professor, must innovate and modify my learning methods. So during the pandemic, I brought along my camera in the University Brunei Darussalam Biodiversity Garden. So we have our own biodiversity garden called IBER, International Biodiversity Research Collaborations under Faculty of Science. And this is where we learn a lot about biodiversity. And from there, I learned a lot about how this kind of modified learning experiences have transformed me as a lecturer, but also changed the way the student understand the biodiversity element. Before moving further on, I would like to send out my disclaimer. I don't have any background in education. My background is purely in sociology, biodiversity, and geography and mental health. So if you're asking me a lot of questions about the international education theories, about the pedagogy theories, I would please to share your questions with the Professor Masita over there. She might be a very germane and very excellent in giving you some great answers. Please, Masita. All right, so all right. So University Brunei Darussalam actually have implemented what we call as GenX, where the GenX really really motivate the student to be more creative in all different time of difficulties and in every single circumstances. So basically, my learning approach is based on the student-centric, where the student can find their own topics, their own problems during the fieldwork. And under the GenX new learning methods, the teachers, the lecturers are coming from disciplinary background, such as me. I have a sociology background, but also environmental study background. But in the same way, I have a master in the mental health science, mental health studies, where I combine between the ecology and also anxiety, which is called like eco-anxiety subtopics in my environmental studies. So in the GenX of the University of Brunei Darussalam, the students are encouraged to develop their reasoning, their communication skills, and also their skills in presenting their ideas and also their arguments. And they should have an independent viewpoint after completing several fieldwork, for example, in my modules. So in nutshell, this GenX in the University of Brunei Darussalam foster three principles such as the leadership and creativity, entrepreneurship, and also caring about the environment. So this is the reason for my module, to allow the students and then bring them to the real and actual environment in our botanical garden. All right. So by having such a student-centric approach, the student can have sort of like a broad-based knowledge beyond their core subject. So for example, in my modules, 60% of the participating students are from the geography and environmental study backgrounds, and 40% are from the Faculty of Science and from the Institute of Health Science. Some of them are also medical, first-year medical doctor, and I have 5 engineering students from the Faculty of Integrated Technology. So in nutshell, my module also serves as a melting pot for the different disciplines or the different knowledge, and even from those who are belong to different faculty affiliations. So by having this kind of connect, the lecturers should have an interdisciplinary and also innovative yet progressive approach when we are hit by the different learning and teaching challenges, for example, imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. But in the same way, we have to maintain our nascent research. So even though the pandemic hits Brunei Darussalam, as a researcher and also lecturer, I must produce some papers that are relevant to my research and teaching and also my learning. So these 3 elements would be improving the way we learn about biodiversity in the near future when the similar challenges occurred in Brunei Darussalam. And these are some of my scholarly attention. I have at least published 4 international papers in the Taylor and Francis and Routledge publishers, for example. I also did a research by incorporating several data from the student narrative on how the pandemic creates sort of like digital pandemic. They are experiencing depression, anxiety because they can't meet their lecturers. They can't go for field work. For example, in my module, they can't touch the trees. They can't encounter biodiversity elements such as endangered animals, and they were actually longing for actual representations about biodiversity. And I used my sociological approach or theories called the hysteresis in my published paper called the Digidemic and Student Hysteresis in the online learning, co-authored with the Professor Chong Ya-Hoon of Institute of Asian Studies. And also, as part of my attention in the mental health problems among the students, I have published in the Asian Journal of Psychiatry, where I must revise my articles for about like 20 times because I don't have a psychiatry background, but then I have to force myself to be able to raise my intellectual concern that the pandemic has also impacted the students' mental state. And we also have produced like 5 Master of Art doing a research on the mental health during the pandemic and how this kind of pandemic have really transformed and shifted not only the learning modes of the student, but also how this kind of learning modes are also shifted their mental problems and also their cognitive repositioning at home and in the university level. And today, I use the term intermediatization, where actually if we have media such as TV, camera, or even, for example, like a vlog or YouTube, all of those are media. So we use different layers of media. So in nutshell, in post-structural sociology, we call this kind of effort or action as intermediatization. The media that are intermediatized by other media, and then other media are intermediatized by other media. So we have a multiple layers of media to convey the message and also to deliver our teaching and learning contents to the students. So for example, in my practice, I bring my laptop inside our biodiversity garden, and then during my live presentations, I show my students a lot of different plants and also trees and even the cute animals over there, and some of local rivers over there, and then also the local climatic event occurred in the Brunei Darussalam. And the students access my live broadcast from their own laptop, from their own computer at home. And then in the same way, their understanding were actually intermediatized by their laptop, by the screen. So it means we have multiple layers. The first layer is the interaction between me with the actual conditions of the biodiversity garden, my actual side of fieldwork, and in the second layer, there is interactions between the contents I broadcast, and it is transported or aired through the satellite via the internet connection, and then the student captured the contents of the teaching and learning content via their laptop. So we have actually 3 layers, and I will be discussing a lot more of this much later on. So through this intermediatization framework, we can understand that actually the process and also the mediating factors become sort of huge influence in the learning and teaching method. And this is a possible framework I can use when I produce my paper on what kind of impact of the cognitive positionings between students and also lecturers during this pandemic. And then number 2, the concept of intermediatizations allows me to understand the different type of the influences where there is an increased likelihood of a new medium obtaining enough a momentum to affect older, more established and more institutionalized media. It means there is a potentiality of improvement. And so the intermediatization actually allow us to prepare the appropriate and well-customized structure for our learning, our research, and for improving our learning methods for our curriculum through examination of distinctively positioned novel medium. For example, I can evaluate my learning and teaching quality through 3 layers of intermediatizations. Number 1, here this is a concept of the involved party in the intermediatization. So we have media-centric proponents where they are media culturalists, media materialists, and also the society. So the society here means the ones who are receiving the message, and they are social culturalists, social materialists. Social materialists meaning that someone or a group of people who are attempting to create the material production of the media. For example, when you watch YouTube on the ABC Australian Broadcasting Company about how to make your body thinner, and you see how the news anchor demonstrates applying the lotion on your skin. As a social materialist and as a group of the viewers, you will be implementing this lotion on your everyday. So it means you become a social materialist. But the social culturalist means you will be considering what are the impacts of the lotions on your skin. Will my body image be influenced and shaped? And will my personal branding be changed if I apply the lotions on my skin? So this is actually conceptual parties. And here, in my research, I use 3 different layers as I highlighted in my first slide. The first layer highlights lecturer and reality interactions, and the second layer present the student and screen interactions, and the third layer talk about the teacher-student screen interaction. So in the lecturer and reality interaction, in the practice, for example, I as a lecturer stays in the botanical garden and do like live broadcasting aired through the internet connection, and then I went for a garden tour to show to all of my students, hey, there are some interesting spots where the indigenous animals are living, and there are some different spots where the ancient geological sites of Brunei are maintained. And number two, on the second layer, there is a student and screen interaction. So actually, my students watch my live broadcast on their own laptop at home. And in the third layer, in the teacher-student screen interaction layer, the students who are at home, they are allowed to post the Q&A to me, even though due to the internet connection glitches, there are some delays in receiving the information or the messages from the students. And through this kind of interaction, the students can discuss the environmental problems among them, and then we can set up like different groups to examine and interrogate these problems, and they can even complete the online quizzes at home. So I have three papers that will be published in upcoming editions, hopefully next year. But for today's presentation, I'm discussing the second and the third layer. So as for the student and screen interaction, I found in my analytical interrogation that there is interplay between images and realities, where these two things can bridge the student's knowledge. In the previous geography and environmental studies, there is a compulsory where the students and the lecturer must undertake a fieldwork. So they have to do a real interaction or actual encounter with, for example, climate change. So they have to go to the actual forest, for example. But through this kind of intermediatization concept, actually, the images and the realities behind the biodiversity can still be learned by both of us. And the screen-based interactivity with the biodiversity allows the students to understand the text, the textbooks actually. So the students can still understand some key concepts that they have read on their textbooks. And also during the online learning from home, the students are actually allowed to use their own search engine if in case they don't find or they don't discover difficult terms in the biodiversity. So the use of the third-party search engine actually make them easier and convenient to work with this kind of difficulties, according to the Bartlett and also Bataran research. I conceptualize this intermediatization as hybrid encounter. So this is hybrid encounter is a bridge actually between created reality and actual reality, and this has become a new form of learning in the near future. Okay, so the autonomous learner, for example, can be developed in this kind of intermediatization methodology, because the student during the learning at home, they can just adjust with their own time, and they can do the screen sharing with other students who are experiencing difficulties in terms of internet connection, for example. And then they can do other things that are supporting their learning and accessing the textbook of biodiversity. For example, they can also invite other students to join their home-based learning, for example. Yeah, and this is the layer 3, the teacher-student screen interaction, which means that we have developed co-constructive learning mode shift. So in the old-fashioned education theory, the teacher or the lecturer should be dominant in the classroom because they are believed as the one who are mastering the knowledge. But with kind of intermediatizations, we can develop the co-constructive mode of learning. But number two, we can also create sort of like improved methodology if the same conditions occur in the future. And the students and also the lecturer are also the co-producer of the learning knowledge, and both of them can create a sort of like equal learning space and teaching platform, and can encounter the challenges all together. All right, everyone, that's all my brief presentations, and I am looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Meridian Alam, for your truly fascinating presentation. I'm really impressed with the colorful figures showing 3 layers of your analysis. And the theories, for me, it's new. It's like because you come from a different background. I'm from education, English education. So I have learned a lot from your presentation. Now, open to questions and comments from the audience. Please share your comments and questions for Meridian. Professor Mitpasel, would you like to say something?
Oh, it was a wonderful presentation, very detailed. So you noticed that you noted that there's opportunities in the future to promote different kinds of learning. What would be the practical applications now? How will we go about that?
I think the practical application right now is under construction because, for example, in my module, when I would like to implement this practice for the upcoming semester, this kind of learning and teaching method is only applicable when we are having sort of like emergency situations. And since Brunei is now embarking on the new normal, so this kind of learning practice is no longer applicable. But I've seen that in the non-higher education setting, in some of the American kindergarten, for example, are also implementing this kind of intermediatization based learning and teaching. So, for example, in the United States, the teachers are allowing students to stay at home to prevent their families from the COVID-19 infection. And then the teachers are moving around in the zoo, and then they are protesting alive from the, from in front of the tiger's cage or in front of the chimpanzee's cage and different side of the zoo. So, and there are not only one American kindergartens who implement this kind of intermediatization piece, but also, I guess, in my literature review, I have discovered more than 150 kindergartens in the United States. So it means that in the non-higher education setting, they are more advanced than us, and in making this kind of method applicable for younger learners. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's a really interesting response.
Thank you very much, Mitch, for your questions and really for your answer. Any further questions and comments, everyone?
Vin,
Yep,
can I ask?
Sure, please.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Meridian. Yes, this is a very interesting study from a different perspective to education. I'm just wondering whether did you recorded all this, right, during your module
Yes,
when you were teaching
yes,
it?
yes,
Did,
yes, exactly.
Did you transcribe it as well, the interactions
Yes.
from the students, the teachers?
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you, Matita, for the question. I thought you were going to ask me some of the education theories, but I'm a bit
No.
nervous.
No, definitely. No, I'm just curious, like,
All
but
right, yeah.
it'll be interesting to investigate from the perspective of education discipline, right? Because in terms of the teacher-student interactions as well. Of course, from previous studies, they were saying like, yeah, the students were not interacting much when you do on-screen teaching and all. But it will be, yeah, because it has this model as well to relate to it. I am interested in once you've published the paper as well, or during your analysis, if you want further discussion.
Yes. So this module called Introduction to Environment and Environmental Problems. So I love problems. So that's why I was assigned by UBD to teach these problems. And then I use the Microsoft Teams for this learning and teaching modes. And then the Microsoft Teams has a recording feature, and it's all for free. So yeah, so everything is well recorded. So you can even, as a lecturer, so the recording duration is about like 2 hours or something. And until now, it is still kept in the Microsoft Teams, storage. I would like to play this recording today, but it takes like 25 minutes to download because it has a huge volume, to be honest. But yeah, if you like to observe, well, you can watch later on upon my return to UBD.
Yes, enjoy your holiday in your home country.
Okay.
Hometown. But Dr. Meriden, with Microsoft Teams as well, sometimes it's deleted, right? The recording, just to inform everyone, because there's a certain amount of time you better download and keep your recordings. As far as I know, yeah, they will delete after a certain amount of a certain period of time.
When I developed these PowerPoint presentations few weeks ago, the recording is still there actually.
Check again.
But I'm not quite sure whether because I have already downloaded and it is stored in my computer. But yeah, I will double check again in my computer, and then I did like manual transcriptions, not involving the research assistant because I don't have a research fund back then. But yeah, so that's the story.
Thank you. Okay. All the best.
Yes. Thank you, Masita. So we have other questions.
Any further questions, everyone?
Yes.
I guess the question is, how do you capture student interest in your teaching? Is that correct, Moon?
Oh, yes. From the Moon Ang, apology if I mispronounce your name, but your question is, how do you do the students' interest to your teaching online? So, yes, well, how I can make my module more interesting and captivating, okay? So first of all, I learned about how to do stand-up comedian before I teach for UBD, because I believe by having sort of like a funny profile for my modules and deliver the contents in a layperson language, the students can be more convenient and they can be more relaxed. All right. So if the students are anxious, they are depressed and stressed in my classroom, they can't absorb what I am talking about. For example, my modules contains a lot more geographical terms and like high level climate-related terms like mitigations, greenhouse gas, oxygen and hydrogen, and also climate change adaptation, sea level rise, sea level things, and so on. And all of those are mathematical and biological terms. While my modules are involving students from different backgrounds, so I have to make my learning contents in everyone's language and imbued with some of personal narrative, as me being a previous corporate employees working for the dolphin, tiger, and also lions conservation program when I was in Indonesia. So it will bring them a lot of inspiration. How can the climate change has impacted the biodiversity conservation? That's number one. And then number two, I also involve so many quizzes and also jokes. I mean, the quizzes will allow them to test themselves about the comprehensions, the level of understanding of a subtopic I deliver during the lectures. And in terms of the online quiz, we can find heaps on the internet like Kahoot and Quizzy and also I guess you can search on the internet. And then number three, I also invited a guest lecturer, and they are from the non-government organizations in Brunei, and some of them are also based outside Brunei Darussalam. So I connected with them via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, so they can deliver their presentation online in English, and I paid them on my pocket. Yeah. So, but they are happy, and everyone happy, and the students are really finding these topics are really captivating, because teaching and learning geography is all about bridging with the natural phenomenon and then bridging the human with the environmental problem. So we should not learn geography topics necessary inside our classroom, but we should use alternative methods via online platform, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Webex, anything else, as long as it is good and acceptable for your institution. And where else? Oh yeah, number four, I also invited guest lecturers and some of the environmental organizations founders in Brunei Darussalam, and she voluntarily came to my lectures and also deliver like 2 hours guided lectures. So I give them preliminary rundown of the structure of the lectures, and also I also introduce them that the student need some incentive, for example, for the quiz. They need, all right, so if they can answer the question, they can get like 2 points for their final marks. So yeah, so that's how, and also, this is also helpful for them to identify their discovery year project, because in Faculty of Art and Social Science, and I guess in other faculties such as in POS, Faculty of Science, Faculty of Integrated Technology, the student must do discovery year. So it's like an internship. They have to go outside university to do some internship with the private companies, and some of the students can get recommended workplace from this guest lecturer, and also they can maintain contact with them in case they want to apply for a fellowship in the United States, in Australia, in New Zealand, and I guess Oh yeah, I do remember one of my students secured 6 month fellowship as an intern at the United Nations UNF UNF uh, United Nations Forest and Climate Change UNFCCC for that.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Meridian, for your very detailed answer to Moon questions. So yes, I'm so delighted to see a lot of interest in your topic. And we got so many questions so far. Perhaps we will look at the final question from Vijay Kumar in the chat box. Would you like to say, read your question aloud, or would you like me to do that instead? Where are you? Vijay, would you like to speak a few words? Okay, that's okay. I will. We will look at the question here.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm looking in the questions right now.
Yeah. Please accept congratulations for your interesting presentation, and he will at the development of holistic personality, the main of education. How your model will ensure it? What intervention you bring in your model to ensure it?
All right. Thank you, Vijay, for this captivating question. The first question is, as development of holistic personality is the aim of education, how your mode will ensure it? My first answer to the first question is, I haven't measured this kind of a holistic personality development yet, all right? And number two, what intervention would you bring in your model to ensure it? My interventions, number one is I'm still evaluating it, whether it will be viable and implementable for the near future if we are, for example, if we are hit by the similar challenges or emergencies like the COVID-19. We never know what the disaster would happen in the near future, but in case of for example, in the disaster setting, for example, there was a similar method where the teacher brings the camera to the gardens. It's like a mobile phone camera to the gardens. And then during the disaster, the earthquake disaster in Nicaragua, the students are under emergency response state. And then the students are not allowed to go to the classroom, even though the earthquakes are no longer there. But as a prevention, the students keep updated with the learning content from the teachers, and then the teachers must sacrifice the internet quota, so they have to make a purchase of the internet postpaid in order for the learning and teaching mode are continued for the student. I guess this is a simple innovation, I would say, but I don't think this is an intervention. But this is intervention means I'm the one who are having a dominant position in creating and changing this kind of learning and teaching mode. But in my reflective evaluations, as I highlighted, I position myself as a co-producer, as a co-producer of the knowledge, as a co-producer with the module. So by the end of the presentation, I asked the student to give me video recorded feedback and also written feedback that they can send through the email. What kind of improvement that we can make if we must implement this kind of learning and teaching methods. All right. So that's one of the co-design intervention, I would say, with my students. Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you very much again. We are having a very productive session so far and a wonderful opening.
Thank you so much.
Webinar series in 2023. So to end the session today, I would like to send our sincere thanks to all invited speakers and guests and all participants for a very fruitful discussion today, and to Professor Mipasa, Professor Nicholas Farrelly, Professor Victoria Canton, our two partners in Brunei and Malaysia, our invited speakers, two first presenters today, and all participants for your valuable contribution to the discussion. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions later, and please feel free to send your questions by email, and I will be very happy to send through the emails to the speakers. Thank you again, everyone, and see you again tomorrow afternoon. Have a good evening.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.